Hey everybody, I'm Steven with Bastion Custom Woodwork. I've been using a Onefinity CNC for a couple years now, and I just wanted to go over my setup. I have the Buildbotics Journeyman with a 32 by 48 bed, and so far I've been really happy with what I can do with this as a hobbyist machine. I've done a few commercial jobs, a bunch of templating, inlays, catch-all trays, you know, all the popular YouTube stuff.
Just watch YouTube.
Okay, starting with the spindle. I just recently purchased the 220-volt water-cooled spindle from Pwn CNC. This was a bit of a learning curve with switching from the Makita router to the spindle, but when people say that the Pwn system is pretty much plug and play, that is a true statement.
It most certainly is!
It didn't take me very long before I was making my first carve with this thing. Really, most of the issues I had to do more with the posts of the cam software that I was using rather than getting the spindle to work properly. I also have the V10 dust boot from Pwn CNC. This thing has been awesome. I was a little hesitant to get a dust boot that traveled with the Z because I did have the Suck-It dust boot with the Makita router, and that worked fine. I haven't really had to do any deep carves with this, so I haven't had any issues. But so far this has been great, and it truly sucks. I do have the Z Keeper as well. I can't remember who made this off the top of my head, but this thing is a pretty cool invention. I couldn't find any other solutions really to the Z dropping either when you hit the E-stop or just shutting off the machine. So every time I shut the machine down, this would just slowly drop into the table, which I did not like. So the Z Keeper has been keeping the Z, if you know what I mean.
Man, what are you talking about? What are you talking about?
Okay, that brings me to this super sweet arm bracket that is, of course, inspired by Lincoln Street Woodwork. Mine is definitely not as functional as his, but it works well for the one task I have it doing, which is holding the dust hose. I did have it shorter at one point, but realized soon thereafter that it was not keeping the hose off of the motor or the spindle, so I extended it a little bit, and that seems to be working fine. And that brings us down to Home Depot dust topper, the OG. I think they've come out with some new versions since this one. And that goes into a DeWalt Stealth Sonic, I believe it's called, 12-gallon shop vac. That thing is pretty sweet. I like it because it is quiet. It advertises as being quiet, and it is. It's definitely a lot quieter than the Rigid, and I appreciate that because as noisy as a wood shop might get, I like to keep it as quiet as possible since I'm in my basement. So I definitely don't want to be making too much noise and disturbing people upstairs.
Be quiet, hash browns!
So I've been really happy with this setup. Not super sophisticated, but great for what I've been using it for so far. For my spoil board, I wanted to come up with something that I didn't have to incorporate any hardware with, like T-nuts, T-track, or threaded inserts to hold down my workpiece. So I came up with this design that basically just uses T-bolts without having to incorporate T-track or anything like that to hold your piece down. This main hole here is for 3/4 PVC that is held in pretty tightly. If you want to take it out, you just use a small screwdriver and you can twist it out fairly easily. And it's a really snug fit, so you just press it back in wherever you need it to be, and you can use wedges or anything to help secure your workpiece against the stops. This was the first iteration of this idea, and I think if I did this again, I would probably turn these smaller slots 90, so they'd be running in the X direction. So I guess to give you a better idea of how those actually work, basically these little pockets underneath that hold a T-nut. So you stick your T-nut in, and it snugly fits into this little pocket here, and these tabs keep it from spinning out when you're tightening your workpiece down. The first one I didn't have these little tabs here, and this would twist out, and it just wasn't very secure. And I was afraid if there was any vibration from the spindle or anything, that would finally at some point knock your clamp loose. So having these little tabs has worked great so far. I haven't had any issues, but yeah, so that fits in there like that. If this is something you think you might want to incorporate into your spoil board, I'll have the files available on my website for download. And I'll also link the bolts I used. I guess I could show how this works. So if you want to put your workpiece down, you stick your bolt into the hole. It tightens when you pull up on it, and then you can tighten that sucker down. Oh yeah, that's not going anywhere, especially if you have a clamp over on this side. That's not moving. So. All right, down below the table, I have some scrap wood and some projects from years ago that I've never finished, and hopefully someday I will. But if you're anything like me, you got tons of unfinished projects. I have the reservoir for the water-cooled spindle. It's windshield wiper fluid, as recommended by Pwn CNC. Underneath here is the black box, because at one point I was going to use this as a flip table, and I've flipped it a total of 0 times. It's been in this position since I set it up, and I really actually don't know how awesome it would be to flip this table, because this thing is heavy and it would probably suck to flip it. So over on this side, I got the controller for the black box as well as the controller for the spindle. I have this little relay that cuts on the vacuum and the water pump whenever the spindle is turned on. And I think that is pretty much my setup. Anyway, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.